Hi, welcome to part 2 of our Purim webinar. Thanks, Dina, for getting us started off this early afternoon. And of course, I'm going to add my thanks to Rebbitzin Steinig over at the OU and Alex Cook, both of whom, nurtured this idea and help us technologically get it up and running. And thanks to you for giving up parts of your lunch hour to sit and talk to us. Dina started off with Purim and really talked about a little bit of an older generation, more tweens and teens. And I'm going to take it back to my comfort zone, for now at least, which is younger children. And when we started talking about ideas that we had for the Purim webinar, we came up with this idea of making Purim a healthier holiday, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, physically, with the foods that we put into our mouths. And I think that really will send us off on our way to contextualize what it is we're going to talk about for the next few minutes, which is the idea of how we create a Purim holiday that really focuses in on all children. I've come to notice that while some of my children certainly mirror much of my personality, I notice that one or two of my children are a little more introverted and a little bit quieter. And for a long time, I think that I didn't realize just how accommodating we should be as parents to children who are a little more introverted. Certainly there are a lot of wonderful new books on the market, both in terms of parenting and in terms of yourself, talking about an introverted personality. And all I think about when I read these articles and these books is, wow, Purim must be a really difficult holiday for children who are a little more introverted. Just think from all levels of, on a sensory level, there's so much noise, there's so much color, there's so much different than their usual routine. As we all know, kids thrive in routine, and that's something that we try to adhere to and sometimes fail, which is fine, and sometimes are better at. But kids do best when they know what it is that's going to happen. And Purim, we're taking a step away from our routine, but we're also introducing literal noise, with our groggers, with our Rosh Hashanim, with dress-up days at school. All routine is sort of thrown out the window. So I really want to talk about creating a mindful Purim, where we're mindful of the activities that we do, the children that we have, and how best they're going to be affected by the holiday, and how we can get them through the holiday really enjoying it, which is what they should do. It is an enjoyable holiday. So I guess I'm going to begin where I often begin, which is the lead up to Purim, right? The kids, certainly in Israel, there's a whole concept of, my kids call it the Misha. Misha Nichnas Adar, whoever starts Adar, we're full of joy and happiness. And so even at school, starting from Rosh Chodesh Adar up until Purim, there's a lot of fun things going on in school, both here and in America, I assume. And I always feel like there's so much joy outside, why don't we bring some of that into the house? And the way that we do that, or the way that I do that, is really to get kids excited about Purim. And so it helps me in two ways. One is a little bit of a tricky, sneaky way, which is to let my kids know that there is about to be a break in routine, right? I'm not all of a sudden waking them up one morning and boom, it's Purim. But rather, together, we're planning what kind of Purim we want to have. So we start, 2 weeks in advance when Rosh Chodesh Adar begins, and we talk about which costumes we're going to wear. Depending on the age of your children, it's sort of like a rock concert with millions of costume changes. One costume is not enough. There's the costume you wear to school for the school day costume, and then there's the costume at night, and maybe the costume the next day. There's no end to it. For younger kids, I really encourage keeping a costume box in general and pulling it out right when Adar begins to let them know all about different kinds of costumes. Let them try costumes on. Again, putting the words in their mouths. Oh, Purim is coming. We dress up on that holiday. If you have older children, you might want to talk about the concepts of mask, the concepts of Megillat Esther. Certainly, if you learn with your children on Shabbat, it's an excellent Megillah to learn with your children. And you can pick either different passages to learn with them, different messages from the Megillah. Everything is really accessible. But again, we're taking the 2 weeks in the lead up of Purim, and we're really focusing on Purim. It gives us a little more excitement, and it lets them know what it is that they are going to look forward to. I like using dinner times. Recently I started to muse my oldest children have sort of entered teenagehood. I have a 13-year-old son and a 14-year-old daughter, and I'm sort of bemoaning these days of small child parenting. My youngers are still youngers, 10, 8, and 5. And so I really have a growing appreciation for family dinner. We've always had family dinner in our house, It's not something that's new. But suddenly, with everybody's schedules getting so busy, family dinner, we have to make a conscientious effort to sort of retime things to make sure everyone is there. But now I really use family dinner, among other things, as a time to sort of stuff in a few teachable moments. Nothing too overwhelming and nothing too scary. But again, in a lead up to Purim, I would use dinners to sort of get people excited. Maybe the concept of nehafochu, things turning on their head, one night serving breakfast for dinner, or one night offering dessert before dinner. Something that gets the kids wondering or asking, or again, excited about this idea that Purim is coming. So this idea of lead up, taking out a costume box, asking kids what costumes they want, taking them costume shopping when usually we would like to avoid bringing our children into shopping establishments. All of this sort of leads them up and gets them excited for the holiday, which is really, in terms of parenting, what we would hope for the most. Also, in our idea of a mindful Purim, right, when we're really conscientiously thinking about what Purim is, we are showing our children that there will be a change in their schedule, and we are making them well aware of it with enough time that they can sort of integrate it into what is going on in their lives. Just looking at my notes, sorry. The other thing that I would say in the lead up to Purim is to involve your children in the decisions that you are making for the holidays. For those who send mishloach manot, this is a great opportunity, again, to work with your kids. Mishloach manot, much like many things, seems to get blown out of proportion from time to time. Suddenly, it's not enough to give 2 brachot to 2 people. Suddenly, we are making these gourmet gift baskets and giving it to everybody in the community, and it gets a little bit out of control. And so part of the healthy choices that we make for Purim is maybe we're going to decide, mishloach manot, who we give to, what we give to, and why we give to those people. So now, instead of giving to every single one of your neighbors, perhaps your children take over the tradition and they pick a few friends that they're going to send mishloach manot to. That makes the whole ritual a little more meaningful than just throwing candy everywhere for everyone to receive. And it gives your child the opportunity to think about, who do I want to give to? Why do I want to give to that person? I always remember this story when one of my sons was younger. They did a lottery in class. And each kid got somebody else. I guess it's our equivalent of Secret Santa. And he came home and he said to me, I'm so excited because the kid that I got is a kid who has trouble in school. He doesn't have a lot of friends. And now I'm going to have the opportunity to make him feel really wonderful. My son perhaps gets in trouble in school from time to time. So this moment of recognition that there was so much empathy in him, that this gave him the opportunity to really think about someone else, someone beyond his, small group of friends or his larger group of friends. Here's someone who sat on the sidelines. So this is an opportunity while your children are giving to all their friends, maybe to encourage them to think outside the box, think about who would appreciate it, and add that person to their list of who they give mishlochei manot to. In addition, what we put in mishloach manot is also significant. For a long time, we just bought tons of candy, the kids stuck it into bags, and off they went. And now, perhaps as they get older, what they give out can be a little more meaningful. So this year, with one of my sons, we're making chocolate lollipops. First of all, I love being in the kitchen, and I love my kids, and I love my kids in the kitchen with me. So for me, I'm getting the bonus of this experience because he's preparing these mishlochei manot, and I get to spend time with him, and it's really meaningful. It's not the same as going to the corner and buying a million Laffy Taffies. It's fine, you can buy a million Laffy Taffies. But maybe one element is something that you've worked on together. Either you've baked cookies together, or you've done chocolate lollipops. P.S. They're very, very easy to make. So you want to maybe encourage them to have a little bit of something different in their mishlochei manot, something that they've taken ownership of. That's something that we talk about a lot on the site, and I've certainly talked a lot about it in webinars. This idea that when children take ownership over something that they've done, over the activity that they're doing, they feel much more connected to it. So in addition, my kids always make their own mishloach manot, even when it's, putting candy into a bag, because I want them to feel like, oh, I am preparing this for my friend. There's a value to me preparing for others, as opposed to having everything set up and then the kids just take it and hand it out. I want my children to be part of the process. So when you're thinking about mishlochei manot, again, what I would recommend is it doesn't need to be a million things, and it doesn't need to be to a million people. You want to limit it also for the benefit of the child, for the benefit of taking ownership over it, so that your child is involved in the process and that it's not just a million candies going in a million different directions. Now, let me be perfectly honest. If ever there were a day of a million candies going in a million different directions, this is the day. So I'm certainly not suggesting that you nail your door shut and feed your kids carrots all day. I'm recognizing what the day is and saying, of course, there's a lot of candy coming in and out of the house, and you're going to choose how you want to moderate it or if you want to moderate it. I have friends who've done all sorts of different things. I have one friend who says to the kids, eat whatever you want today, take whatever you want in, and tonight we're donating everything that's left over to, I don't know, some organization. And that way the kid has the freedom to eat and get sick, and then it's all out of the house by the next morning. What we do in our house usually is my kids get a Ziploc bag. They can put in what they really want in moderation. When the bag is full, they're done. And I think that that's probably, it works for us. So I will keep to that, and I will suggest that as a possibility. But again, there's so much sugar floating around. You want to be reasonable in your expectations. Another thing that happens with sugar and no routine are meltdowns. And so I'd like to say there will be meltdowns, and that will be fine. Your kids are allowed to melt down. When my kids were little, and for the little ones now, I make sure that I have breakfast and lunch prepared in the fridge so that at any moment that there's downtime or the inevitable I'm hungry, first of all, I make sure that they have breakfast in them before they, tear open their bags. There's breakfast for them. I make sure that there's cut fruit and vegetables for them. I make sure that there's lunch for them if it's significantly before the time that Suda begins, so that it's not an entire free-for-all. I try to at least create the illusion that I have some control over what's going into their body throughout the day. But again, because there's no routine, you want to make sure that there's breakfast, and you want to make sure that there's lunch to sort of offset the amount of sugar that may or may not be going into their body. Regardless, you want to create a scenario for your child to succeed. I'm going to come back to Mishloach Manot. I don't think I'm finished yet, but I do want to segue into Kriyat Megillah for a minute, the reading of the Megillah. This, to me, sets children up to possibly fail. For those of you who have children who are very comfortable sitting in shul quietly for long periods of time, I say, tell me how, because those are not my kids. Well, that's not all of my kids. I have some kids who are calm and comfortable sitting and comfortable being quiet, but for the rest of the time I sit nervously, or I did sit nervously and anxiously wondering when the first peep was going to come, and when I would have to start giving them treats, or I was going to have to distract them or give them a coloring book, or and so Megillah reading wasn't meaningful to me, and it was really just anxiety ridden because I was just waiting for my kid to fail at Megillah reading. And the truth is, it's not a failure. Children talk. Children can't sit for 45 minutes, and that's really okay. So you want to create whatever it is, whatever the scenario is, so that your child feels like he or she is part of the Purim experience, that they have heard some or all of the Megillah, and that you have heard it as well. I really buy into children's Megillah readings, which are smaller and more family-oriented. We do one in the house where we all understand that when a kid gets up and a kid moves around, that there's somebody there to take him or her out or to play with them, so that there's a Megillah reading, but there is an understanding for children. You don't want to start the holiday off being very frustrated with your child or angry that he or she couldn't sit through it. You want to create the scenario where they are successful. If that's saying you're going to listen to 2 prakim with them and then go home and you'll go back for a later reading, that's fine too. You want the kid to feel good about themselves instead of to feel bad about themselves. And I really feel strongly about that. I think that Megillah is one of those things where we get very nervous. We have the chiyuv to hear it all and to be a part of it, and we sort of put that on our child, perhaps when they are not ready. Once your child is ready, that's wonderful, but you want to make sure that your child is ready so that you don't have those feelings of anxiety or frustration with your child. I will say that you can create a scenario where the Megillah reading is done very personally, right? With my youngest, I would talk the Megillah with them, right? When they were 2 or 3 or 4 years old, we would talk about certain ideas, or we would talk about the characters so that they would feel connected and part of it, and maybe not the pressure of sitting in a shul throughout. Okay, let me see where I'm up to now. I want to go back to my introverted child and your introverted children and children that get overwhelmed easily. And I want to talk for a moment about how to make the holidays successful for them. One is when we know our children, we know when their breaking points are. Usually we miss it by about 5 minutes, but what we want to try and do is sort of find them in their places where they are succeeding. You want to find the child in his or her successes and encourage that. So I have one child who fairly consistently will not wear a costume to school, yet he loves picking out that costume. And so we pick it out every year. And I remember for the first number of years, it was like a battle to get them into their costume. And then at a certain point, you know what? You don't want to go into a costume. I'm going to respect what it is that you need to do. Perhaps bring it in a bag to school. Perhaps have it somewhere where it's easily accessible. But my vision of Purim doesn't always coincide with my children's. I'll give you one of my favorite stories. When my littlest were 3 and 2, we had them in these adorable bear costumes. They matched. It was so cute. I could tell that there was something off with my daughter. She wasn't feeling great, but I painted these rosy cheeks on her, and she was such a cute little bear. And, we schlepped her around delivering mishloach manot so that everybody could tell us how cute they were. And, we took a lot of pictures. And when we came home at about, noon or 1 o'clock, I discovered that she was running 101 fever. So there was my parenting epic failure for the holiday. But, we get so wrapped up in our expectation of what it should be that we don't often stop, and we are often not mindful of what it really is, what the reality is. And so we offer up all of these opportunities along the way, from the 2 weeks before, learning on Shabbat, the Megillah reading, choosing your costumes, thinking about who you give mishloach manot to. We offer up all of these opportunities so that our kids can have success where they are successful. So for my child who loves making chocolate lollipops, that's great. So he'll feel success in contributing to the mishloach manot. And if he decides the Purim parade is too much for him, so then he'll stay home without me, bemoaning the fact that not all of my kids are out and enjoying. That's okay. That's the reality of the situation. And that's going to have to be fine. It'll make a more successful Purim for you internally, for your soul, and for your child. I guess with my remaining few minutes, what I want to talk about is the Purim Seder. I spend a lot of time thinking about the Seder for Pesach, and that's really such an intimate family experience, and by intimate I mean 25 people, but we're going to call it intimate because we sort of hope that it is. And I think the Seder is different for 2 reasons. One is that often Seder is done with friends, and often with a lot of friends, and so there's a lot of chaos. So whereas leading into Pesach, we've been cleaning, we've been focusing in on those sort of issues, and the Seder comes at a different type of time. And Purim, we've basically been out of our routine, in costumes, eating candy for many, many hours, and then either 1 million people are coming to you, or you're driving out to be with 1 million people. And so it can really be another one of the challenges that we have over the holiday. Now, again, every challenge can be, when we're mindful, challenges are things that we just need to recognize in advance. Make sure that whichever Suda you are going to, that there is plenty of child-friendly food. Meaning your kid's going to be hungry at this point. If you're somewhere else, you're not necessarily in charge of the menu. And if you're hosting in your house, you're not necessarily paying attention to your kids. So you want to make sure from the start that there is a menu that's very accommodating to children. Adina mentioned drinking. I will sort of sidestep that because as much as possible, I try to have Sudas that do not have a lot of alcohol. I think especially when children are young, and especially when we want to role model certain types of behavior, it is complicated for children to see their parents inebriated or tipsy or buzzed. It's not something that I think works well for a child. So what I would say for Suda is, again, you want to have a child-friendly menu, and you want to be conscious of the fact that there are children there. You don't stop parenting at a Suda simply because there's alcohol there, if there is alcohol there. And so I think that that's something that, again, I recommend mindfulness toward. The Suda should be a time that we encourage children to be involved, to participate. Either you have games for them to play on the side, paper bag dramatics, coloring pages, whatever it is. The menu can reflect a theme, which is what we've done for years and years. Each year a different theme, which can be adorable. Older kids can contribute by helping to cook. Everybody can have a different role to offer ownership over different parts of the Suda. And ultimately, and I guess this is where I always come back to, wonderfulchalcrumbs.com, ultimately what we do we do for our kids. And we want them to have the most successful experience possible, and we want them to feel as good about themselves as possible. So you want to create that reality for them. Certainly on a day, I'm going to sort of summarize things now. Certainly on a day when there is no routine, when there is a lot of candy, when there isn't a lot of parental involvement, you want to make sure that your kid still feels safe and looked after, and that their personality is recognized. Extroverts love the holiday. Maybe someone who's a little shyer, maybe someone who has sensory overload. This could really be a form of torture. There's just a lot going on. I always make sure to sort of close our doors for about a half an hour, 45 minutes after we've delivered all of the Mishloach Manot and before Suda begins, just so my kids can breathe. Either I put on Phineas and Ferb for them, or I give them a meal, or I read someone a book, just so that you sort of touch base and you have that breathable moment between going from craziness number 1 to craziness number 2. It's a wonderful holiday. The messages, which it's probably for another webinar, the messages for Purim are so significant to who we are as grown-ups and who children are. There's so much that is teachable there. But for at least this webinar, we're talking about being mindful and creating a healthy environment for our children. Check out Chalakrams. We've got some great things going on over there for Purim. Thanks to Adina, as always. Thanks to the OU. May we continue and continue and continue. All the best.